We have a special edition of the Difference Makers podcast this month to celebrate Black History Month. Carol Markwei, Paladin Airport Security Services Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, is joined by PalAmerican Regional Director of Operations, Johnny Boykins, to discuss being Black in the workplace and their experiences surrounding that. Johnny and Carol also touch on overcoming imposter syndrome, code switching, and the importance of having allies. Here are Johnny and Carol.
Hi, Johnny. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's kind of cold here in Florida, but we're doing great.
Now, what's cold in Florida? Because
Cold in Florida is anything under 60 degrees.
so it's still Vancouver summer. I feel you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly.
I'm so glad you could join us and we could do this together. I haven't really had an opportunity to speak with other Black leaders within the company, so I'm very excited to be doing this with you.
I'm so happy to be here, and I can't wait to talk about Black history and how that affects us here at PalAmerican and Paladin.
Yeah. So for our listeners, I'm in Canada and Johnny is in the US, in Florida, to be specific. And we have very different experiences being Black in our respective countries. And I'd love to hear, what has your Black experience been like in the US, especially in your leadership journey?
Well, certainly. Thanks for that question. So I think that, being particularly a Black man in America, our country has a strong history with kind of white supremacy and a strong history with slavery. And fast forward to today with police violence, it's a unique time and experience for Black people, Black men in particular. But for my kind of journey in kind of corporate America or in PalAmerican, has been one of kind of, I'm the one, I'm the one that's kind of paved the way. I've been with PalAmerican, since it started back in 2015, 2016, and have kind of worked in kind of every level of our organization. And for me, in my whole experience, that's kind of been my path, from, high school all the way through college, as being, one of few, African Americans or Black people, in spaces. And that is, how kind of I've navigated, to my job now as regional director of PalAmerican, overseeing the South United States. It's kind of moving and shaking, but settling into my space and into my place here, and knowing who I am. I come from a strong family background, strong leaders and people who have been pioneers, and that's really my experience here. How about you?
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm very similar in many ways. I'm originally from Ghana and moved to Canada in 2007. And I realized that when I moved here, I knew I was Black, but I think it really started to dawn on me when I wasn't part of the majority of people that I see in my everyday. And yes, like you, I was the only in spaces. It has been like when you see a Black person in Vancouver, you sort of nod or you say hello, you acknowledge that they're there. And I remember going to Toronto and I did that, and people are like, sis, we don't do that here. You don't need to do that. There are so many of us. So it's been a very interesting, lonely, resilient experience trying to build a career here in Vancouver. And you feel like, well, I felt like I had to represent for everyone who could possibly come behind me, which can be very stressful at times because you always feel like you're on stage and you can't let the stereotypes get to you, or you can't live into the stereotypes that people have about you and about me and Black people. So yeah, It's been difficult, but I don't think I could have done it without sponsors and mentors, which I'm excited to talk more about with you.
Certainly.
The Yeah, the lonely experience of being the only is still there. This past weekend, I saw American Fiction with my siblings, and we were the only Black people in the theater. And American Fiction, our listeners, is a very interesting movie on class relations and a writer trying to really rise within his ranks and publish his books. And it was such a surreal experience because the things we were laughing at in the movie
Yeah.
was very different from what the audience was laughing at. And so, yeah, it's a
So
surreal
there's like,
experience.
I think we get it in kind of our culture or Black culture, that if you're not on the inside group, it may not resonate the same way. And it's similar to, like, I kind of have this experience a lot where um, I do a lot of code switching in my job.
Let's
And
talk
just,
about it.
just for example, like when I'm talking to employees or people, at the site level, the way in which we engage in conversation is a little bit different than how I would talk with the CEO or a client or someone in the C-suite. And I think about how often I do that on a daily basis. It's very second nature to me now, where I can just kind of move in and out of different environments and adapt to that. Um, and it's always just kind of funny, or I always get this kind of impression where, for example, when I was meeting with the CEO, and I was with, my colleague, Bob Coyne, who is the director of Florida, and we were going into this big meeting. They were going to, talk to us about something. And she immediately like turned to Bob and she was like, hey, started talking to him like, he was the person that she was meeting with. And I kind of just raised my hand and I go, hey, well, I'm Johnny Boykins. I'm the one that's been emailing you. This is my colleague, Bob Coyne, who's much older. He was a former police chief. So he kind of looks the security part, when
Yeah,
you think about, what a security director would look like. It's a Bob Coyne. And the look of shock, was just kind of like, oh. And then she asked me like how old I was, which I thought was kind of strange. And I'm like, well, I'm old enough to have this job and to be here.
yeah,
But it's those kind of things that I think about a lot as I navigated my experience in management, in people managing, and also just dealing with executives, which when I first kind of landed here at PalAmerican, I didn't have a whole lot of experience. So a lot of the beginning of my career was very much imposter syndrome, where I'm like, I should be here. I'm not a CEO. What am I doing? And I'm so thankful, like you said, about the sponsors and the mentors that I had, that took me under their wing and showed me the ropes and really gave me a chance to prove that I was as capable as I knew I was, but kind of advocating for me to be out there in the forefront and to be the leader that I am today.
absolutely. You mentioned code switching. Can you please tell us what is code switching and how does it show up in your daily life?
So I don't know if I have a textbook definition of code switching, but it's where you kind of adapt your way of speaking and tone of voice, or the way of speaking, to the audiences that you're with or in. And for example, the way that I talk with my friends, outside of work, may sometimes use, African American English vernacular, so that's a way of kind of talking Black American. And I kind of can switch that to when I'm talking to Jason Vasion, PalAmerican president. And I switch that to when I'm talking to, my clients, who are, C-suite level individuals. And it's just adapting your way of speaking to the environment that you're in. And I can tell you that it happens to me 50 times a day. When the FedEx guy comes in to drop something off, versus when I'm, making a call to one of my friends having a hard day. It just really depends. And I think as Black people, it becomes second nature to us. And it can look very weird from an outside person looking in. They're like, why do you talk this way? When you're with these people, why do you talk this way? And it's really a way to adapt and to in some ways provide safety, to
Yes.
yourself. And so, the way that I would talk to a law enforcement officer, if I was ever pulled over by the police, is going to be very different than when I'm, joking around with my brothers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And I do the same thing too. I expanded it to talk about covering, which is a phenomenon known as the downplaying of known stereotypes or known identities about yourself just in order to fit in, to build that resiliency, and to be accepted. And I find myself doing it every day when I moved to Canada, changing my accent. And when I get home, my accent, this accent I'm speaking with, just disappears. And I start speaking in my Guinean accents with my friends and my family. And I'm doing the same thing you're doing, code switching each time when I'm speaking to someone. And I want to talk about that psychological safety that you mentioned. We do it so that we can create safety, we can continue building resilience. Do you ever find yourself exhausted from code switching?
Um, oh, certainly. There are days where I know, I mean, I'm a 6 foot Black man. And whenever I'm in spaces, I know that I could be a perceived threat to some people just for no fault of my own, just by me just simply existing. And so I'm hyper aware of those situations. If I'm on an elevator here in our office building, where to stand, how to show my hands, how to talk with a nice kind of greeting. I could be having a really bad morning. I've traveled into work and I'm just having a really bad day, but I can't ever, just have a bad day when, other folks can and are afforded that space and comfortability to do that. It's something that I'm super hyper aware of. And I know for me, I guess, at my level now, it's not as bad as far as the kind of psychological toll, but I do know when I'm working with kind of mainline employees, um, and I'm having to counsel someone on, their customer service approach, even though I know, how they said this greeting is proper and doesn't really offend how they are coming off to other people and the outside appearances. I've had to do a lot of kind of cultural connecting to our clients, to the general public, just that, this person's not being mean or doesn't have an attitude because they're giving you this greeting. It could be how they were raised, that's what they talk like, and it's not a negative impact. But I do recognize that there are stereotypes that happen, particularly in the security industry, particularly with Black women, in my line of work, or at least my experience. I've had to do a lot of kind of helping our clients understand their requests sometimes may not be culturally appropriate, or engaging in kind of stereotypical thinking, by hairstyles or by ways of speaking or by simple greetings.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for mentioning that. I think that is part of making sure we are creating a psychologically safe space for our team members, especially our Black team members, to come in and to feel safe and to do their job. I do think we are in a time of having to explain our humanness or explain our culture and selves to people, or rather downplay it and just adjust so that, like you said, we don't seem like a threat or we don't seem uneducated, if you will. All of a sudden, when you're in certain spaces, you would like to use formal language, etc. I do want to highlight that in separating or in compartmentalizing myself to fit into different spaces, that has also become some sort of strength the higher I grow in my career, because I'm finding that I can connect with everyone and I can connect with anyone. I can also add some, I don't want to say gravity, but I have seen myself in certain spaces drop my Canadian accent to be taken even more seriously or to make people pay attention. And so I like that now I'm able to balance that identity and I don't feel bad that I am code switching. I'm seeing it as a strength. How have you navigated creating those safe spaces for your team and for yourself as you grow in your career?
Yeah, so I mean, so just a little bit of my background. I came to kind of PalAmerican from like the legal profession. So I was, working in law firms before I kind of landed a role here, and in the legal field, it's very formal, and so everyone is addressed by sir or ma'am, Mr. or Miss, and one of the things that I brought to um PalAmerican is a kind of use of formal language when I'm talking to anyone on the team, whether you are a mainline security officer or you're the director. I always refer to you as Mr. or Miss and last name, and that took off, which I was kind of surprised about. Once I started doing it, I think everyone kind of emulated that communication style. And the reason why I think I did that was, one, I was also in the military before that. So the military is also a kind of a formal communication structure. And
Yeah.
it put everyone, I think, on a same level playing field. And so whether you're, a, a site level security officer or you're the director or, an executive, I offer everyone the same level of respect. And I think my team has adopted that kind of communication style, which I think creates safety, because now it's not, you security officer so and so, or site leader or manager. Everyone kind of is on an equal playing field. I think my demeanor, if I'm thinking about myself, I'm pretty diplomatic. I have a master's degree in diplomacy, so I would like to think that I am a bridge builder. I'd like to truly engage, all the other stakeholders, whether they're the employee or the client, or and try to really drill down and resolve kind of disputes at the lowest level possible. And I think that has certainly helped me create a sense of safety throughout the team.
Mhm.
And I do that really by modeling, positive behavior with, my white colleagues and my black colleagues or Hispanic or whatever. I kind of model the behavior that I would like to see, and then I think people adopt it and are more forthright when they've been wronged or they have a grievance that they want to bring up. It's not out of like spite, or we're not creating a situation where folks are scared to air whatever they want to talk to us about. And I think that as a leader, it's my job to create that space and to create a place where anyone on the team, whether you just started yesterday or you've been with me for 10 years, that if you come to Johnny Boykins, you're going to get a fair shake and an honest opinion or viewpoint and fairness. I think, and that's really what we all want, is to be treated fairly, to be seen, to be respected, and I do that by modeling my behavior.
I love that. Thank you. What would you say is, or what has been some of the experiences that you've had in terms of sponsorship? How have other, let's say your white colleagues or your white leaders in the past, made you feel safe or made you feel confidence in the work that you do and supporting you to grow within your journey?
Yeah, so certainly there's a couple of things that come to mind. One, I'm 38 years old, so I'm not that young, but a lot of times, pretty early on in my career, when I would go to client meetings or go to anywhere, basically, um, like no one would really take me seriously, or they would either dismiss me when I was the one that showed up. Like I said, I gave you an example earlier in the conversation about my colleague Bob Coyne. He's the director here in Florida. He's an old school guy. He was a former police chief. And there were a few times where we were doing RFP presentations. So we were going up and trying to present and sell PalAmerican to these groups of people. And 100% of the time, even now, when we go into a room, the conversation always starts with him. And what he does all the time, which is he just redirects it back. He goes, "Hey, well, actually, I'm not, I'm just Bob Coyne. I'm here. I'm in support of Johnny." And he kind of just gently just redirects the attention back. And so that's a good, he's been a really good supporter in my development, because he's teaching me that, hey, I don't have to kind of fight for it. I'm going to redirect it. With that being said, I also had, just great mentorship with people like Jason Bajan or Anjane Aver, who helped develop me into a manager, into a people person. And they helped really kind of develop my management skills, which I had some leadership ability, from my time in the military, but kind of navigating this business space. They really did some deep work to help me get there. And I'm forever grateful for that, which is why I am such a strong advocate that we are constantly developing our team, finding out the people who want to be leaders in our organization, and spending the actual time. Like, I spent probably 2 or 3 months working side by side with Anjane and Jason when we were launching our Colorado project, learning from them, and they spent that amount of time with me to develop me into the leader that I am today. And they kind of saw, I think, more potential than I was kind of giving up at the time. So I'm thankful, that they gave me, the opportunity. I did the Paladin management training program. And that was kind of on a whim. Jason was like, "Hey, I think you would be a good manager here. Let's go up to Canada. Let's go up to Vancouver and see what it's all about." And I think all too often, someone in that same circumstance, without those people taking some level of action, would be looked over, and we would miss out on tremendous potential and opportunity.
Absolutely. I really like what you said about them investing in you and showing you the ropes, trying to get you up to speed. I think that is such an underrated skill that really good leaders have, because sometimes you get stuck in, oh, everybody knows this, and not really giving the time to say, actually, some people don't. And
Yeah.
you would think it would be second nature, but it isn't. And when you're in certain spaces, as you grow, one thing I appreciate about Paladin is this leadership program that you mentioned, because oftentimes you'll go into a leadership role where all of a sudden you have people reporting to you, etc., but you haven't been trained and you don't have the skills to be a leader. So I really appreciate that you're not being set up to fail from the jump. you have the resources, and it's even better when you have the sponsors and the mentors to help you along the way.
Certainly, certainly.
Yeah. Okay. So when we are talking about some of the building resilience in the day to day and overcoming imposter syndrome, what are some of the methods that you have used in overcoming that and really calming your mind? Because I feel like after a while, when you are so focused on the fact that you feel like you don't belong here or you feel like you don't know enough, the mental strain is a lot. So, how have you balanced that?
Well, certainly. So one of the things that I think about a lot is that I've done just about every job in PalAmerican. You know, I've been recruiting, I've done HR, and one day, I think kind of in the middle of the pandemic, it was a very tough time for all of us, to just, particularly in the people managing business, it was just a lot going on. And I think we were doing an acquisition and some other things were happening, and I was going to onboard a new large client. And one day I just, I don't know, kind of had a panic attack about just all of the things that were on my plate. And, and I'll never forget this. I just called Jason and I'm like, I need help. And I think one thing that, particularly Black and brown people who are kind of in these spaces, are afraid to do, at least I know that I was afraid to do, was to say, you know what? I don't have this. I need help. I need, I need help. And Jason's response was like, it was very, very kind. He was very kind about it. And he was like, all right, well, let's figure this out. What resources do you need? And what I realized was that, hey, I can't focus on scheduling anymore, these sites. So maybe I need to like onboard a scheduler to take that pressure off of my plate. And what I always just kind of advocate for the leaders that I'm building up now is that when in doubt, raise your hand and say, I need help. Those words, can be truly liberating. I know that they were for me. And I also recognize how scary that is because, oftentimes we are kind of suffering in silence where you're holding on for dear life. And what you really need is someone to throw you a life vest and to, to keep you afloat. So I think, my biggest, I guess, a piece of advice would be just to raise your hand and say, hey, I don't have this, and allow the organization to bring you that life support.
Absolutely. I think that there are a lot of Black and brown leaders who are unable to say that because of fear of not being seen as excellent enough or fear of losing the role just because they can't meet the demand and therefore closing the door to others like them behind them.
See, yeah, I think about that a lot, and my mom always says, you know, um, Johnny, you're pretty excellent in what you do. You're super involved, and she always says to me that it's okay to be mediocre. And what she means by that is that like what I'm doing is so far above kind of the status quo that I'm gonna be
Yes.
fine. And I think that the burden of excellence, is just that, it's a burden, and that no one should try to maintain that level of engagement and status for their entire career, because you will quickly find out that you can't sustain that.
Yeah.
But being really, really good at what you do, I think, and having your work, show for itself, is, I think, enough of a safety net, particularly for Black and brown people, to lay on, and not to worry about like, if I fail at this or if I'm not as good at this, that it's going to hurt someone else. Because I think 9 times out of 10, we're likely doing a lot better than we perceive. I think as leaders, we have to do more in providing that feedback, which I think a lot of organizations struggle with, not just Paladin or PalAmerican, is that we got to really get in the habit of providing feedback and counsel to all of our team members so that they can be assured that they're doing okay, that
Mm.
that their work is fine, that that they're moving the organization along. But having an excellent mindset is not sustainable at all.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. That desire to be excellent and to work 2, 3 times as harder as than everyone else. I admit I'm still balancing it myself. Last week, for our listeners, I work with Paladin Airport Security Services. We're just setting up our operations, and I'm involved in really bringing the team together and hiring. And I remember we were doing so many interviews last week with roles that I don't know anything about. And I had to interview these people. And I remember during the weekend, I was looking at past job descriptions, I was looking at acronyms, everything that could concern their role. I was looking it up so that when they're talking to me, I was just as informed in what they did, and I could ask really thoughtful follow-up questions. And then I speak to others in the team, and they're like, I don't know. I don't know what this acronym means. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute.
I'm very much a do your homework kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I know but I think it's taken me this long, this current role that I'm in now, to realize that like setting boundaries is okay. And that's another behavior that I think I have to model for the team, that we
Yes.
can't be our best selves if we're always doing this job and being so ingrained. I can't provide quality service to our employees if I'm too taxed. If I'm reading all night, I'm not going to be my best self for the interview that I have in the morning. And so, knowing that it's okay to take that break and to disengage from the work, is a valuable lesson that I'm hoping is going to be much easier for any individual that comes into our organization, to be able to see, that, I don't have to give 120% to this job. I could do my best and do my work. But at a certain time, I can turn it off and come back refreshed and engaged the next day.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to briefly touch on our experiences in person in the office. Now, when the pandemic hit, I was one of the happiest people on the planet, respectfully, listeners, because I felt like I did not have to make people comfortable with my presence or shape shift my personhood to make sure that others are comfortable. And so working online, you turn on your video, you turn it off. It is what it is. You're hearing my voice and you're not seeing my face. And I'm not, you know, working through the emotions and the questions of what are your qualifications and what's your background and where are you really from? Like where are your parents from, all those questions. Um, how has it been for yourself, and what are some techniques that you use to make yourself and your team feel comfortable in their skin when they come into the workplace?
Yeah, I was the complete opposite of you. I absolutely was not a good work from home person. And so
Ah,
I came to the office every day during the pandemic. At a certain point, it was just me here, kind of keeping the lights on. But I think, for me, I think being I guess, for lack of a better expression, like one of the highest ranked people in our office here, I think people treat me differently. So one of the things that was brought up to me was that I like to kind of ease my way into the day. And so I was very kind of coming to the office, going to my office and ease my way into the morning. And one of the HR folks here said, "Hey, Johnny, you never say good morning to us." And I didn't realize like that's what I was doing. And when they said it, I was like, oh, I don't say good morning to anyone. I just kind of come in, shut my door, and like get started on emails. And so now I take, that 5 minutes when I'm walking in to greet everyone and to say hello and to catch up on whatever happened over the weekend or what's going on. Or if there's something that I can actually help with, they may be having a problem that I could, send an email up and get their issue resolved. So those are kind of things that I think we do here, or at least here in the St. Pete branch office, is one, we are kind of cross-generational. It's a little bit young, a little bit older. We're a pretty diverse kind of group of individuals. There's some hybrid schedules in there, so I don't get to see the entire team all the time. But we do take a little bit of time to get to know each other, in a work environment way. And for me personally, is showing up as the leader here, and affording a simple greeting in the morning, which could make a big difference. And I don't know if other directors would have that experience, or if that was just for me, but I know that made a big difference in the office. If I'm coming in and I'm grumpy because I've taken 4 calls on the way to work, I can't necessarily bring that kind of energy into an office environment. And I'm pretty aware of that now, of how I present. And I mean, one of the things that's really funny is that I go out a lot to job sites. And every time I go out, you'll see like the entire demeanor of everyone on the post changes, because like, one, I don't get to go out, that often, or I'm not, in front of the security team that often. And I'm like, why is everyone so stiff? Why are people, sitting straight up? And I'm like, just be yourself. And it's because it tells me that wanting to get out more, and be with the team. But two, I think it shows me that everyone has a pretty good respect for me and my role and what I have to do in my job. And so it's a two-way street, and I certainly uh, do my best to kind of navigate all of that.
I like what you just said about being out there and being seen by others. I think last week I happened to be doing presentations for our Paladin airport security staff. And when a person of color saw me in my leadership role as director, their first instinct, whoa, what? Really? Oh, wow. Okay. That was their thought process. But then also I had people reach out and say, wow, I really want to get to know more about you and your journey. I want to grow into those areas, or I want to grow into leadership. And it is so nice to see you. And then you begin to build those connections, and opportunities for mentorship and sponsorship seem to naturally flow in that area. So I do think, not to plug diversity and inclusion, but I do think that it is a very important field, because you can only dream when you see something, when you see an example of something, and you're like, ooh, okay, the thought I had in my head, or the dream I had in my head, is entirely possible because someone is in front of me who has done it. So it is important to show that diverse leadership teams. Now that we are, getting more people up in leadership, and hopefully we won't be the only ones. Next time we'll have a bigger group discussion. But what is your vision for what you want your team to look like, to feel like, and how you want work to be in the US?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah, but one, I do think that, we have a lot of work to do, in PalAmerican in advancing, our management, and, all the way to the top. I want, you know, leadership positions to be occupied by the vastness and the beautifulness of our employees. We have, a wide range of thinkers and security professionals that can really push PalAmerican to the next level. And what I want to see is for us to invest in them as much as PalAmerican has invested in me as an individual. Um, I pride myself in, promoting a number of women in our organization. That's another kind of underrepresented group in security management. I have given, opportunities to a lot of women leaders in Florida and in Texas, to really show that, women can occupy, these positions of power and leadership. And I want, our management kind of masthead to look like our employee, base. And that's going to require us to do, I think, investing in training and investing in individuals, and also knowing what their interests are. You have to actually talk to people and say, hey, are you interested in operations, or are you interested in admin, or are you interested in people and culture? And really putting them on pathways for success. And that just requires all of us to not close the door behind us. I never want to close the door behind it. I want to bring as many people through the door as I possibly can. Um, and I also, think that it's incumbent upon me as a leader to be the voice, because I do have a seat at the table, and I can, bring something up, even if it's uncomfortable. Knowing that I have agency, and I built relationships with our leadership group, that no one's going to be offended by it, by me bringing it up, but knowing that at least it's being said, and we can advance, the narrative from there. How about you? What do you think? Changing in your view?
Oh,
I feel like you're the expert in diversity, and equity, and inclusion, and I'm here, as an ops leader, but I think there are probably, industry standards and thought leaders on this subject. I know it's a pretty big one and pretty taught, but I think, you may have something to add to make, our family of companies even better.
yeah, I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to what I can add to it. I'm very much like you. I'd love our leadership teams to really reflect the societies that we live in, and to really reflect the body of the company that we live in. Oftentimes, I find that when we say we're diverse, frontline, fantastic diversity. And then as you get into like middle management, oh, okay, I see one or two. And then you move even further up and it becomes more difficult. And one thing that I think I appreciate about us as a company is our willingness to at least take a chance, recognize it, like you said, not be uncomfortable with those conversations. I've been in a couple of DEI meetings with Chad, our president, and at the end of the meeting, I'm like, oh yeah, today's the day I'm going to get fired. But he has been very supportive, and he has shown his appreciation and faith in the way that I communicate, and he has come to understand why the work is so important overall, important to me, but also important to the company as a whole. So that is one thing, the openness to try and to give opportunities to others and to implement um, policies or hire different people or seek out different perspectives. I appreciate that about us. I think that sometimes, though, we can get like super excited and eager. And the work of DEI is not a race, it's a marathon. So we don't necessarily just want to, oh, hire the Black person or hire this person. You want to find the best fit for your culture, for the job, for their knowledge, expertise, and what they're going to bring. And I think that's where it can get a little bit more tedious or tiring, or you can lose steam when it's taking too long to see the change you want to see. So, yeah, so for myself, I really want to take this marathon and continue to work with people who are interested in seeing that change. And then, eventually when you Google the board of directors or the management team, you can see everybody there. And that would be really when we've created an equitable space, is when I guess the dream is realized.
Oh, excellent. I couldn't have said it better.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you, Johnny. Do you have any other questions, or is there anything that you wanted us to touch on?
No, I mean, I think that this is, not just a conversation between you and I. I think that, the folks who are going to be listening to this and to all of our employees, don't be afraid to bring up that idea, and use the channels that I think we are afforded, because you never know, that one idea, may resonate, and we can, implement changes at, every level of the organization. So, I would encourage folks to step out on a little bit of faith and use a little bit of bravery. If you think it's going to be a hard conversation, but do it anyway, because it only makes us better when we are listening to everyone on the team. And I believe that, everyone has value in our organization, and around the world, to be quite honest. And so don't be afraid to speak up.
Absolutely. And likewise to our counterparts and leaders, please don't be afraid to listen. Please be open when we share some of our ideas, and yeah, give us the opportunity to see how far we can go with it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
That's super awesome.
Yeah, I hope we get to do this again. For our listeners, thank you for joining us. We will see you on the internet somewhere. Have a wonderful day, morning, night, and see you next time. Thank you.